Last one. Here we go. We're getting there. Now, if you're still unsure about VFR, it's time to stop, take a break, and then watch it all again. Because now we need to take all your recently learned skill set on basics, procedures, information, and physiology, and show how to use it in a nice and proper way. The picture is almost complete. This is VFR management. All the pieces has been collected, and now you need to bring it all together. Things you should know by now. Ground rules. What is VFR? What are the requirements according to your airspace class? Have a complete understanding that you are providing flight control service and traffic information service within your control zone. Flight control services through instructions that you build VFR structure up upon. Establishing the foundation of latency clearance, putting in instruction to lay out the path for him, and provide instructions to appropriately enter a circuit under all conditions. Exactly how you are his eyes by providing him with in-detail information concerning what he meets in his path in order to aid him in navigating properly, both in the circuits and around different parts of the control zone when traffic may be conflicting. And have phraseology understanding for how to utter these instructions, how to utter the traffic information, how to structure it all, and how to delay airplanes in the circuit. Now all this comes together. Oscar Yankee Papa Yankee likes to get in the control zone. You can give him instructions to enter the control zone, how to enter the circuit, how to assign him in the sequence, and how to make him aware of other airplanes, and lastly terminating his flight, all using correct phraseology. Likewise, you can give him correct departure instructions on ground, lay out his route, and advise him of the traffic he meets on the way. Now use it to manage different situations on the network. The possibilities of situations you need to manage are endless. But we will cover what we are seeing are the most common scenarios that pilots are given controls so that you would be at least reasonably covered. The ones we have selected are flights within the control zones away from the airport, circuit management in general, managing VFR intertwined with IFR, managing low pass on the crossing runway, leaving control zone in a non-standard direction, and entry into the TMA. A lot to go through. This is less theoretical and more like real scope situations we will look at. Flights within the control zone away from the airport actually does happen. Sometimes planes just want to follow the Lillehammer route or fly around Copenhagen away from the airport. In this case, you use the same structure. Enter control zone via VATSIM-Scandinavia 1,500 feet or below to follow the Lillehammer route. See, this is replacing the instruction to join the circuit. It's that easy. If they're not going to the airport, when you're not really that concerned where they are, you can also just say enter control zone via VATSIM-Scandinavia 1,500 feet or below. There's no need to specify more. You allow him to fly around the control zone as he pleases as long as he does not enter the circuit. You should, though, in addition to the Lillehammer route, do some specification on, I would say, 3 specific scenarios. 1. If you're in doubt that they know how to stay clear of the airport, because you never know, then make sure you stay northwest of the airport, or something similar, just to make sure that you're sure. 2. And this happens sometimes. Helicopters. Mainly to the General Hospital, Rigshospitalet, which is right there in your control zone. Enter control zone via VATSIM-Scandinavia 1,500 feet or below. What can you say for a landing at Rigshospitalet? Report landed? That's an example. There's no clear to land or anything like this. The place itself is uncontrolled. There's also another airport, in case you didn't know. Echo Kilo Charlie Charlie, the seaport. And if you have the seaplanes coming in, it follows the same logic. Enter control zone 1,500 feet or below for landing at Echo Kilo Charlie Charlie, report landed. Something like this. 3. If they cross the airport because they need to go east, then you have to choose the best possible path for them. Now this is management. Here, you just have to use your creativity and your logic. See here, 2 to left to use. Plenty of IFR, VFR in circuits, and he needs to cross. Directly through? No. To the north? Bad idea. Why not to the south, and then he can stay clear of both arrivals and circuit traffic? Just be aware of departure. So you can say, cross the airport to the south. Or maybe, as I have asked you so many times, maybe you can tune it a little bit and be even more specific and avoid confusion. How about say, cross the airport southwest of 04 left threshold. Now you're sure he's clear, but there's still a problem with the departure. So, can you be even more specific? Think, well, how about follow the coastline of Amager to the south until clear of the airport? See, I make up these depending on what I want and being as specific as possible. This was 3 tiers of instructions depending on how precise and how specific I am. If he's all the way south there, then he's no issues for departures either. If I don't have any departures, then maybe the second option is sufficient. But the key to effectively managing VFR is to see the possibilities and see the issues with what you're doing and say what you need them to do precisely. Think really hard about these scenarios and think of other scenarios that might be similar. Now, let's move to the next topic, circuit management in general. You only have VFR. You need to always define the number they are in the sequence. Number 1, number 2, follow system 172 on right base. Number 3, follow Piper 28 on left downwind. Number 4, and so on. Be aware of this. The clearance limit. This is too early though. What is the use of informing when he has no chance to react to it? The other 2, they're still far away. So give the information when it's appropriate. Just saying number 4 is actually pretty good because then he knows that there's a lot of airplanes. When you say after departure, left patterns from 2 to left, 1,500 feet or below, which is the way to clear the circuit from the ground, keep in mind if you change the patterns of, for example, Papa Yankee, who had a right circuit, but now you need to do left circuits, then a new clearance must be instructed. Asking a Papa Yankee, runway 2 to left, clear touch and go. After departure, left patterns runway 2 to left, 1,500 feet or below. Consider the pyramid. We completed it all. Foundation, instruction. In this case, we asked to report downwind and told him he was number 1. Then we terminated that basis. The termination always relates to the foundation. If you keep the foundation, you don't have to terminate it. But in this instance, we want to change the foundation, so he needs to go to left patterns now. So we start from scratch. This time, it resembles the departure part because, well, after his touch and go, he is departing. So we say, after departure, left patterns from 2 to left, 1,500 feet or below. That's it. And only need it when you need to change the foundation. If you look at probably Masulu, he's just doing circuits, and the next one will be the same. And the one after that will be the same. So we just keep going and going with the same foundation. In general, if you have just VFR, it's relatively easy because they will just follow each other. Much more complex does it become when managing VFR intertwined with IFR. You cannot escape the fact that IFR comes in on the ILS and must be intertwined. General kind of guidelines are IFR should have priority to the extent that you should not ask an IFR to go around. If a VFR is ahead and an IFR is clearly catching up, then send the VFR around even though he's ahead because he doesn't really have to go far to set up for the approach. Be smart here. If probably Masulu is on final here and SAS is catching up, remember you can't just send him around and then expect all your troubles to be gone like in a green oasis. There's still a conflict here. So make sure to then advise him, asking probably Masulu, turn crosswind and downwind now, in order to clear him away from the path of that mighty Airbus behind him. Next is situation responsible for a high number of failed checkouts. So you need to just absolutely nail this aspect. Respect a 4 nautical mile zone. Your VFR in general should not go outside this. If a VFR gets too far out, it will take too long to get back because of the low speed, and the next IFR coming up will catch up and create havoc. So use techniques to have all VFR flights remain more or less within 4 miles of the airport. 4 situation comes to mind that can be tricky. Easiest one first. IFR comes in, VFR comes behind, and he will remain within 4 miles. Then it's just a standard asking Pauli Masulu, number 2 behind Airbus A320 on 4 mile final. Number 2 behind A320 4 mile final, Oscar Papa Yankee. Scandinavian 661, traffic is a light VFR on left downwind turning behind you. Nice, it works wonderfully. Second is if the IFR is further away, but the VFR follows the regular pattern, turn around 3 miles, and then the IFR catches up. Annoying situation. Then remember, you can also demand the VFR to make a short approach by either using Appendix A.1415 that says, make a short approach. Or even better, even more precise, which is what we like. When you see you have the situation, oh, I can make him a short approach there, tell him, turn base now, and turn final. Oh, that's nice, because now you know he's going to turn right away. Think logically and creatively about it. That's what we're going for. Next is if you do the mistake and he gets too far out, and then it's going to be a long way, you can't make it back in. Well, then what can you do? You just have to extend his downwind. You do that by saying Oscar Yankee Papa Yankee extend downwind. It's also on point 1415 right below. Now he's finally behind the A320, but he has a long way in, and there's other VFR flats behind him. Do they now have to make long finals as well? No. Well, change your sequence. There's nothing keeping you from changing your sequence, is there? Oscar Yankee Tango Fox, turn base and final now, you are number 1. You change the sequence, but your pattern is actually now in order again. This is just creative management and a sign of an excellent S2 controller that can look at the big picture and take quick, decisive decisions to optimize. Is there another VFR? Well, evaluate if you need to do the same thing again. Keep your overview of the situation. Fourth situation is when the final are full of IFR and you just can't seem to get the VFR in. Then use the orbit, as we discussed in the physiology chapter, to keep them close to the airport until there's space. Remember to specify orbit right, because left here will take him directly into the approach path. Remember, you can't use 2 right, if you need it. There's no separation. No separation means no separation. You can use the parallel runway if you like. It's pretty neat. And so few controllers do it. If 2 left is full, then use 2 right. Just make sure you use proper traffic information. It can be tricky. Oscar Yankee Tango Alpha Fox behind 737 3-mile final, turn base 4 runway 2 right. Red Nose 3097, traffic is a light VFR on left downwind, turning behind you. Scandinavian 661, traffic is a light VFR crossing the center line for approach on 2 right. Oscar Yankee Papa Yankee, traffic is an Airbus A320 on 7 miles final for the parallel runway 2 left. It's a lot of stuff to do. Look at it, train yourself. Now, low pass on the crossing runway, a S2 checkout special. One that fails students all the time as well. How do you manage this? You have to specify the pattern when the pilot requested low pass. Because as we said, you're going to change the foundation, right? So Oscar Yankee Tango Alpha Fox, runway 2 left, clear touch and go. After departure, join left downwind, runway 30, 1,500 feet or below. So far, so good. That's pretty okay. Then you just got to make sure that the 2 VFRs that are now on 2 different runways don't land at the same time on the crossing runways, and that can be tricky. This is where, again, you have to find your overview and solve situations creatively. Use the extend downward or the turn base and final now. The 2 great phrases. Extend downward to delay, turn base and final now to expedite. Use these instructions to make sure that they don't cross. The separation is similar to what you learned earlier. Oscar Yankee Juliet Bravo may not be allowed to cross the threshold until Bravo Lima Zulu has crossed the intersection between the runways. And you also got to be careful with taxiing airplanes crossing the runway. Did you know you can actually specify maintain 500 feet or above? This means because minimum flying altitude is 500 feet, it makes it not an approach but an overfly, and if you do that, you can actually taxi airplanes below him. Doesn't mean somebody can land on the crossing runway, but taxiing is okay. And remember, once he gets the low pass, he needs a new instructions about what to do after the low pass, so he once again can be sequenced into the arrival runway. So after the touch and go, a new foundation to go for the low pass. Once he's finished with the low pass and going back to the previous runway, it's a new foundation to go back to the previous runway. It's pretty complex stuff, so do make sure you're allowed only when traffic permits and make sure that you have the spare capacity to effectively manage it. Onwards, leaving control zone in a non-standard direction is actually a pretty easy thing to do, but it does demand you know your geography a little bit. You see, just because that there are VFR reporting points doesn't mean you actually need to use them. If an airplane is flying in another direction, for example to Malmö, then you will specify either direction, north, south, east, west, or specify another landmark, Øresundsbroen or Ballerup, all depending on how advanced you are, how well you know Copenhagen, and what the pilot is requesting. Directions are normally quite acceptable. You simply just replace the VFR reporting point in the departure instruction with the direction or appropriate landmark. Oscar Echo Bravo after departure, leave control zone to the east 1,500 feet below. That's easy, and it's true for all airports. So, the last one is entry into the TMA. This is when you have a VFR departure, normally on a route that he needs to go further, and he needs to climb more than just 1,500 feet. So, he needs to request to enter the TMA from your control zone. Here's another thing, and we need to have a talk about S3. You've seen this schematic to death by now. but let's just roll it down a notch to the airspace class of the TMA, of Class Charlie. What's the difference here? Well, who cares, because they're the responsibility of S3 controller. Well, except two. First of all, he needs a transponder. That means he needs to be assigned a unique squawk, a real squawk, not 7,000. And he needs to be there, identified. That's the first part, and this must be done before anything else. And yes, you may need to check the radar scope for that. The reason for this is that he must be separated from IFR traffic now, so a radar target is needed for the approach controller. Secondly, he needs permission to enter. This should be given by the approach controller. However, in most cases, you just coordinate with him, and then on behalf of the approach controller, clear him to enter the TMA. Oscar India Juego Bravo, enter TMA 3,500 feet or below, whatever the approach controller cleared you to give him. Once he climbs above 1,500 feet, you can just hand him over to approach. It's easy to do. Just remember, assign a squawk, identify, coordinate with approach, clear him to the altitude coordinated with approach or below, and monitor him in the radar scope to see his altitude, and then hand over to approach. That's the management aspect of the VFR course completed. You've now made it through all the steps of the VFR program. I hope this has taught you some valuable skills to manage your VFR traffic. Understand what VFR is and what is expected of you, know the procedures and what instructions to give him, understand the effective use of traffic information to guide him in and out of your airspace, use the correct phraseology to make it smooth, and have control of your management skills to anticipate and solve any possible situation presented upon you. Next, there's going to be a practical session that shows all these skills, and then you just need to train them on the scope. Thank you for your dedication to VFR, and thanks for watching.